Jai class. So today we'll be discussing another poem from your English literature book. It is called It Was Long Ago. So the poem is quite very simple. It is written by Eleanor Farjeon. Eleanor Farjeon was a poet who wrote this particular poem about her earliest memories. So the words that are used in the poem are very simple. It is written in a conversational style. That is, it appears that she is talking to the reader, and there's a certain expression of speeches that you will see, or phrases and words that essentially are there to include the reader into her own memories, into her poem. So let's start the poem. The poet starts with the line, I'll tell you, shall I, something I remember, something that still means a great deal to me. So she says that I'll tell you, shall I? Then, that is, she is asking your permission. So she is trying to include you, something I remember. So she is asking a question, may I tell you something that I remember? Something that still means a great deal to me. Great deal means something that means very much to her. She is still attached emotionally to it. Something that still means a great deal to me. It was long ago. And then she is saying that it was this the memories that she is trying to convey, the memories that she is going to describe in this poem, it was quite some time ago. So it happened several years ago, and now she is all grown up and she is remembering something from her childhood. A dusty road in summer I remember, a mountain and an old house and a tree that stood, behind the house. So again, the word over here, she's trying to include the readers, you and I, into her story. She says she remembers a dusty road in summer. So the time that she is remembering from her childhood, it was the summer time, and she remembers a dusty road and a mountain and an old house and a tree that stood behind the house. An old woman I remember in a red shawl with a grey cat on her knee, humming under a tree. So, and she also remembers an old woman who was wearing a red shawl, and she had a grey colored cat resting or sleeping on her knee, and she was humming to herself, humming under under a tree. She seemed the oldest thing I can remember. And then the poet says the old woman appeared so old, she felt at that particular time, the poet felt that that is, that old woman, is the oldest thing in the world. But then perhaps I was not more than 3, it was long ago. And here we see the age of the poet, that she was at that particular time 3 years old only. And she says then perhaps means maybe. In Hindi we say shayad, and then perhaps I was not more than 3. She is not sure if she was more than 3 years old. And then again she says it was long ago. I dragged on the dusty road, dragged as in she kept on walking. I dragged on the dusty road, and I remember how the old woman looked over the fence at me and seemed to know how it felt to be 3 and called out. I remember. So she kept on, I dragged on the dusty road, that is, she kept on the road which was dusty, a muddy road, and in the summer it was, the mud was dry, so it's quite dusty. I dragged on the dusty road, and I remember. So again the use of this particular phrase, I remember, again and again in the poem, it describes that she is trying to remember something very old. I dragged on the dusty road, and I remember how the old woman looked over the fence. Fence is the boundary wall that is usually built up around a house or around a property. It is usually made up of wood. It could be made up of iron or metal as well, another metal as well. So she remembers how the old woman looked over the fence at me as in at her, at the poet, and seemed to know how it felt to be 3. And the way that the old woman looked at the poet, who was only 3 years old, it appeared that she felt, the poet felt that the old woman understands, she remembers how it was like to be a 3-year-old, and called out. And so the old woman called out to the poet, and I remember, she says, I remember again. And what did she calls out? Do you like bilberries and cream for tea? Bilberries are small blueberries, types of blueberries which are very common in Europe that grow on bushes. They are wild berries, right? So she says, do you like bilberries and cream for tea? I went under the tree. So when the old woman asked the little girl, the poet, who was only at 3 years old at that particular time, when the old woman asked, do you like bilberries and cream in your tea? The poet went under the tree. The poet went towards the old lady. And while she hummed and the cat purred, I remember how she filled a saucer with berries and cream for me so long ago. And the poet remembers that the old woman filled a saucer with tea and cream, and she filled a saucer with berries as well, right? For the little girl, for the poet. And throughout her taking out berries in a saucer and pouring her a cup of tea with cream in it, the old woman was humming, and the cat on her lap, on her knee, it was purring. Purring as in it's a sound of contentment, satisfaction that a cat makes. And then again the poet says so long ago. So again the continuous use of the words I remember and it was long ago or so long ago. It is trying to convey to the readers, it is trying to tell us you and me, that this particular memory is a very old memory, yet she still remembers it. Such berries and such cream as I remember, I never had seen before. And the poet still remembers that the taste of the bilberries that she tasted, that the old woman gave her, and the taste of the tea with the cream in it, it was the most delicious tea with the cream, and it was the most delicious bilberries that the poet had ever tasted, and she still remembers the taste of those two things. And never see today, that is even now, even when she is all grown up, she haven't tasted the same taste of bilberries, the same taste of tea and cream again. And that is almost all I can remember. And then the poet says, that is the extent of my memory. That is all I can remember. The house, the mountain, the grey cat on her knee, her red shawl and the tree. What are the things that she remembers? The house, the mountain, the grey cat that was purring and resting on the knee of the old woman, the red shawl of the old woman, and the tree under which the old woman was sitting. And the taste of the berries, the feel of the sun I remember. She also remembers how the berries tasted all that long ago. She remembers how the berry tasted in her mouth, and she remembers how the sun felt, the heat of the sun all those years ago, and the smell of everything that used to be so long ago. And she also remembers the smell of that particular time, the smell of the flowers, the smell of the freshly cut grass, or the new grass, green grass, the smell of the trees, the smell in the air. She still remembers when she was 3 years old. Till the heat of on the road outside again I remember. And now the long dusty road seemed to have for me no end, And now the poet moves on to a bit more philosophical side. She is trying to tell you, till the heat on the road outside again I remember. That is, she once again travelled on a dusty road, and she still remembers how the dusty road all those years ago when she was 3 years old, she still remembers how it felt at that time, and she remembers how it felt again today, and how the long dusty road seemed to have for me no end. And she still remembers how that long dusty road appeared, that it had no end. It kept on going and going. That is the farthest thing I can remember. Farthest as in at the maximum distance, right? In Hindi it's called sabse dur, farthest as in sabse dur, at the maximum distance that you can imagine, right? That is the farthest thing I can remember. So it is the last thing, it's the last dregs of the memories, the last portion, the last thing in the memory of that time that she remembers. It won't mean much to you. And then she concedes, she accepts the fact that that is her memory and her description of her memory and how she felt about that memory. It may not mean much to you, as in to us, to the readers. It won't mean much to you. It does to me, but it means a great deal to her, because she experienced that. She has that that memory has a special place in her heart. She still remembers it and she is still moved by it. Then I grew up, you see. And she says, then afterwards I grew up. As in, she is trying to tell you about her childhood memories and the how everything to a child appears innocent and pure and beautiful. So these are the things that all the things that she remembers. So that's it. The poem is complete, kids, and I'll be sending your assignment separately. Thank you, class.